Okay, welcome everyone. As we are sponsored by Shalom Fogel, Leilu Nishmas Yaakov Zev ben Yodai, Rivka Bas Yaakov Yosef, Tzivya Miriam Bas God, Yosef ben Siyam ben Yaakov Zev, and for a great shidduch v'chaya Tzivya Bas Shoshana Gittel. We're sponsored by Baruch Ian, Leilu Nishmas Yaakov Chaim ben Abba, Esther Bas Yona, Avram ben Shmuel HaKohen, and Lefur Shalema for Liba Bas Anya. We are sponsored by, for the spiritual, emotional, and physical protection of Yeshua Menachem Mendel ben Bela Shendel Rivka. We are sponsored L'Refut Shalema for Taiba Reiza Bas Hinder and for great Zivugim for A.B. Spry's daughter and grandchildren. We're sponsored by Eddie Chazan for the safety of the IDF, for the Nitzachon, and for the safety of Klal Yisrael. And we're sponsored by Menachem Yemansky with the tefillah that all those that are looking for a zivug should find it quickly and easily. Okay, welcome everyone. As we are starting by Omar Rava. Now, we're starting in the middle. Yesterday we determined, either through logic or from a pasuk, we determined that the dung of a sharaniskel is, you could be mekadesh a woman with it, but the dung of Avoda Zara, you cannot be mekadesh a woman with. And the Gemara says, Amar Rava travayu tananihi. Both of them we learned in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah covers both of these lessons. Midika from the fact that first the Gemara thought that the cheese of Beis Naike was also mipnei shemamidin bekevis nevela, because they curdled it with the rennet of a nevela, the kamahaderle, and they responded, like kevas oila, the keva, the rennet of a burnt offering, chamura bekevis nevela, because the burnt offering, not only is it forbidden, but it also carries an Issa Me'ila, while Nevela doesn't have an Issa Me'ila, and yet they used to sip, if they weren't fastidious, the rennet of an Oila. So we see that it's not Asr Bahana, the rennet is like dung. In other words, it's just a pirsha, it just separates from it. Michlal, so from that we could imply the Surana Sharu Pirshayu, that although an Ola is of course Asabana, yet that which separates from it, dung or rennet, is permitted. And then the Gemara says, you know why it's Asr? Because they curdle it with the rennet of idolatry, of calves of idolatry. From the Kamalei Mibnei Shemamid Noisa Bekevas Egle Avodas Kechavim, because they curdle it with the rennet of calves of Avodas Kechavim, and then become a haduleh. He answered, so then it should even be asa b'hana. Why is it only asa b'achila? Im kein lama lo yasura b'hana michlal d'Avodas Kechavim asa pirshayu, that it's separate, that which separates it from it, whether it's dung, whether it's rennet, is asa. Says the Gemara, but v'lahader lei, why doesn't he answer that the reason why it's not forbidden b'hana is mishum deleisei li'isurei be'enei. Even if you curdle it with the rennet of a calf of idolatry, the rennet gets burnt out through the curdling process. So it's not there anymore be'en. And we said that that's a reason why it shouldn't be asa b'hana, because that was the svara of the Rabbanan, why Murias, where they added wine into the Murias, where we said that the Rabbanan hold that it's not asa b'hana. The Murias Rabbanan, the lo yasru b'hana, the fish fat, even though they added wine into it, my time, because the fish fat burns away the wine. So Amrei, the Gemara says yes. But this is a klal in kashrus, and that is a davar hamamid, something that curdles In other words, it is the one that affected the change in the item is choshev, and it's not bottle. Imrei hacha kaven de ukmei kamukim, since it actually curdled and made the cheese choshev lei, it's considered choshev, and it's commanded isay l'isura beinei. It's as if the isur is there, and therefore it should be even asur b'hanah. So he sealed the davar acha. The Gemara says that Rabbi Yeshua changed the subject. He changed the subject to something else. I made a bracha already. Let us welcome in Shali Zeitlin, Baruchian, Michal, Saba, Chaim Kramer, Yitzi Fuchs, Yaakov Warman, Mo Kushner, Shimon Klein, Nachman Chapler, Dr. Guy, Dr. Block, Mel Zachter, Eddie Chazan, Menachem Yemansky, Shalom Fogli, Yisrael Fisher, Marshall Castle, Barry Cement, Moshe Lehman, Berish Gesserman, Rabbi Kranzel, Yeshutman, Yitzi Muller, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, Abe Arbach, and Ruvain Shannet is just joining us for our 28th Zoomer of the evening. So the Gemara says he changed him to a different subject, the pasuk of Ki Toivim Doidecha Miyoyim, which we concluded means that your love, Hashem, for Klal Yisrael is more precious than wine. So the Gemara says, what does this mean? This is not just poetry, So the Gemara says, Ki Asir Avdimi Amar Amra Knesset Yisrael Lefnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Klal Yisrael says in front of Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam, Olai Divrei Doidecha. It's sweeter to me the words of your beloved ones. In other words, the words of the sages, Yosim Yena Shel Torah, more than the wine of Torah. In other words, the Klal Yisrael accepts upon themselves the gezeirus of the Rabbana. It's sweet to them that they accept beyond the Torah, they accept the gezeirus of the Rabbana. And one of those gezeirus is not to eat the cheese manufactured in Beis Nike. So he said, just accept the gezeirah. Why did Rabbi Yeshua refer to this pasuk? He was really referring him to the beginning of the pasuk. You see, this decree against the cheese of Beis Nike was a new gezeirah. And there's a klal that new gezeirah, you shouldn't ask questions about it. You don't want to give anybody a reason not to accept it and not to establish the new decree. And he hinted this because in the beginning of the pasuk it says, Yishakeni minashikas piyu. The Klal Yisrael says, may you kiss me with the kisses of your mouth. Now what does that have to do with the price of tea in China? When a person kisses, he purses his lips. He, so to speak, shuts his lips. And therefore he told him, he was indicating, don't ask questions on a new decree. Amalei Yishmael Achai. Yishmael, my brother. Talmidei Chachamim are brothers. They're all of Klal Yisrael is brothers because we all have a common parent. We all have a common father, Avinu Shebashmaim. That's why it says, Achenu Kol Beis Yisrael. We all have a common parent. So Amalei Yishmael Achai, Yishmael, my brother, Chashoik Sifsaisecha Zu Bezu. Shut your lips one with the other. Va'al Taval Lahashev. Don't be hasty to ask. So the Gemara says, my time. We're supposed to ask. We're supposed to understand. We're supposed to question. Oh, it's a new decree. And a new decree ain't a fakfikin ba. you don't question it. You don't want to give anybody a reason not to accept. They want to establish a new decree and make it part of the body of the Torah of the Rabbanan, and therefore we don't look into it. So the Gemara said.
Does lahashiv mean to ask or to answer? Altavai lahashiv is that to answer, correct?
No, here it means to ask.
Ah, okay.
What it means over here actually is to respond. I said something, don't respond, because he said it's a golem of Avoda Zara, so then he asked that it should even be, he responded, so here it means ask, but he responded that it should even be asba. No, he says, don't respond on a new gezer. So the Gemara says, my gezerta, what was the decree? And now when we hear the reason of the decree, we'll see why it's only aser ba'achila. Am Reb Shimon Pazi, Am Reb Shimon Levi, Mishum Niker. The reason the decree is that the cheese was made with Goyish milk, and the Goyish milk they kept uncovered, and we're worried about snake bites, of snake drinking, not snake bites, of snake venom. Says the Gemara, so then V'lei Malei Mishum Niker. So then why didn't Rabbi Yeshua say that the reason is al sneaker, and that's why it's only Asab Achila? Says the Gemara, Kid'ula, the Amar Ula Ki Gazer Gezer to Mamarava. When they made a new decree in Eretz Yisrael, Loi Miglu Taima Atresa Yarchei Shata. They didn't reveal the reason. Because when you reveal the reason, people will say, oh, forget it, that's a silly decree. They don't have to worry about the uncovered milk. You know, they're worried anyway about cleanliness. So we don't reveal the reason. Because maybe there'll be people who will say, for that you don't have to worry. And they'll come to neglect it. And therefore, in order that shouldn't happen, we don't tell them the reason. I do this with Marshall all the time. As long as I don't start up with the Romanian francs, he's fine.
And the bourbon.
Now, we have, by the way, notice that the night is young and we already have 30 Zoomers. Now, Megadif bar Reb Yirmiyah, so to speak, blasphemed, meaning he acted like violently. If the reason is because you're worried about snake venom, Elameyato Yovsha Tishterei. If the cheese dries out, it should be permitted, because we have a klal that venom doesn't let something to dry. Yoshin Tishrei, if it gets aged, it should be permitted. Dam Rav Chanina Yavesh Mutter, if it's dried, it's mutter. Ei manicha liyavesh, because snake venom will not let it dry. Yoshin Mutter, if it's aged, it's mutter, because Ei manicha liyashin, snake venom will not allow it to age. Amr Rabbi Chanina says, you know why? Even if it dries out, there's still some drippings of milk on it, and therefore we're worried that maybe there's some venom in that drippings of milk. Comes along Shmuel, and Shmuel says a different reason for the cheese of Beisun Yake, a different reason for the Gezeira. Well, Shmuel Amar, you're right. If you would curdle it with rennet is Pirsha Ba'alma. But sometimes they curdle it with the skin of the moor itself. Oh, the skin of the moor of Nevela, that's definitely awesome. Says the Gemara, with the hide of the moor of a Nevela. Says the Gemara, Hakeva Gufa Sharia, but the rennet itself is permitted. Umi Amar Shmuel Hachi, does Shmuel say that the rennet is permitted? But Tanan Keva Sa'ivit Kechavim, the rennet of a pagan, v'shel nevela, and of a nevela, harizu asura. Says the Gemara, v'avino, but we wonder, what's the two things? The cave of a pagan and the cave of nevela. The cave of a pagan is a cave of nevela. A pagan doesn't do shchita. It says, you're right. It's really one and the same thing. The cave of the slaughtering of a guy is nevela, the rennet is nevela, and it's asura. But you just said that the rennet itself is mutter. It's only the or of the more itself. Says Gemara, like kasha, that's not difficult, because kan koidim chazara. This is before Rabbi Yeshua retracted. Rabbi Yeshua initially said it was because of the rennet, and then he said, Rabbi Shmuel said, but what do you mean? Even the rennet of an oiler is permitted. So he retracted. So this teaching of Shmuel is before Rabbi Yeshua's retraction. Kan la'acha chazara. So then why do we have the teaching if there was a reversal? The teaching didn't budge from its place. But Eino Chanami, after Rabbi Yeshua retracted, the rennet itself is permitted. Now, another reason for the gezeira on cheese. We're having a bunch of reasons over here. Just getting underway over here on a beautiful Wednesday evening. Mamish, it's an amazing thing. These WhatsApp groups, they were looking for a minyan here in Elm Shade, and they called the minyan Mincha 8:10. I left 5:10 from Lakewood, and the ETA was 8:09. I mamish pulled in just in time for it's really amazing. These navigators, it meant that I couldn't stop along the way, which made it a little harder, but I pulled in mamish for 8:10, Daven Mincha Marv, and I'm here for you. It's really an amazing thing. And here's Avigdor Free joining us just in time for the turning of the page, Avigdor. Rav Malkia, 2 lines from the top of Lamed Hamad Beis, and Rabbi say, as you know, we have a triple crown tonight. After the shir, we will have the Chumash shir, a very interesting Chumash shir, if I might say so myself, and then we will have the Mishnayos. I also want to say that tomorrow nights for the Shabbos table will be a rather special for the Shabbos table, because this coming week is my father's yahrzeit, and I will talk about a little bit of new things from my father, which I never spoke about before, so stay tuned for that as well. Says the Gemara, Rav Malkim Mishmeid Rav Abba Baba Omar, another reason for the gezeira of the cheese, Mipnei Shemachlikin Ponel B'Shuman Chazer, because they based the face of the cheese with the fat of lard. They based it with lard. Rav Chisda Mipnei Shemamidin Oisei B'Chaimetz. It's because they curdle it with the vinegar of wine. Now, that's going to pose a problem again, because if it's the vinegar of wine of Yayin Nesef, so again, it should be Asabana. The Gemara is going to ask that question. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amar Mipnei Shemidin Oisei B'Srafa Orla, because they curdle it with the sap of Arla. So again, that's going to pose a problem, because Arla is Asabana. So the last 2 reasons are going to be a problem. Why is it only Asabachila and it's not Asabana? But first let's talk about sap, because the sap is not so pashut that the sap of an Arla tree is Asar. We're going to see that there's sap and there's sap. Svei dinim in sap. If it's the sap of the tree or the leaves, it's not Asr. But the sap of the fruit is Asr. Let's see it inside. Command. Ki ai Tana, like the following Tana, that nan Rebbe Lazar Mamid B'Sras Arla Asr. If you curdle it with the sap of Arla, it's Asr Mipnei Shu Peri. It's a fruit. Says the Gemara, no. Afilu Tamer Rabbi Yeshua, even Rabbi Yeshua that argues, when he argues about sap, he only argues about the sap of the bark. Ad kan loy polig Rabbi Yeshua leid Rabbi Eliezer ela bekat for the gavza, the sap of the bark. Aval bekat for the pera, but the sap of the fruit, moide. Behind it, that nan Rabbi Yeshua shemati beferish shamamid b'srafa olin, if you curdle cheese with the sap of the leaves, so b'srafa ikarin, or the sap of the roots of arla, it's mutter. But b'srafa fagin, but if it's the sap of the unripe fig itself, that's aser. Shu peri, it's part of the peri, and therefore it has the isser of arla. But the question is, if you curdle it with the sap of arla, or you curdle it with the wine vinegar, then why is it only aser b'achila? Bein Rav Chisda, bein Rav Nachman Yitzchak titzabana. Says Gemara kasha. That's taka kasha. Should be aser b'ana. Now, once we brought up the psukim of Yishakeni Minashikas Piyu, Ki Toivim Doidechem Yayin, we now talk about another very, very important pasuk, which trumps the greatness of being Marbitz Torah. And I have to tell you that when you let other people know of the shir, and you get other people now so it doesn't mean that you're going to be successful right away. Yaakov Warman gave out all those cards. You never know when something is going to come back to roost.
They're still giving out the cards.
Yeah. Look, all of you see that gentleman that calls in and say, hello, it's David. David Helfgat is finishing Shas with me, I think 5 times. And how did he find out? Because one time I decided to put up a sign and get a sign hanger, and he put it, this was when it was legal, then it became illegal, but when I did it, it was legal. I got a sign hanger, and he put it on all the lampposts in Bar Park. And David Helfgat saw the sign. He started to come to the shir.
Don't see poor Shabbos, I don't think.
What?
No, come on. What time?
But the greatness of a Marbitz Torah, says the Gemara, Darash of Nachman B'Reider of Chisda, Mai dichsiv l'reach shmonecha toivim. The fragrance of your oils are good. Says the Gemara, here, the shmonecha is referring to the Torah scholars. And the Gemara says, L'mat Talmud Chacham Daima. What is a Talmud Chacham analogous to? L'tzluche shel pleitim, to a vial of perfume. Megula, if it's uncovered, reicha noidef, its fragrance spreads. Mechusa, if it's covered, ein reicha noidef, its fragrance doesn't spread. So if the Talmud Chacham is uncovered, that he's Marbitz Torah, then his fragrance spreads. V'lo, but for taking the time to teach others, things that were previously hidden from him will be uncovered. He will learn secrets because he uncovers himself and makes himself available. Shenemar alamois aivucha. Now, literally, alamas means the girls, the maidens. The maidens love you. But kari bei alumais. Alumais is from a lashon of nelam.
Number 20, I gave him.
Okay, good, thanks.
A lashon of nelam. What is hidden will love you, will be revealed to you. Shenemar kari bei alumais, that which is hidden. V'lo, alumais can also be read as 2 words. Almavas, above death. He'll have a relationship with the Malach HaMavis that he'll be above death. Ela shemalach HaMavis oyavo. Malach HaMavis will love him and won't chapper with him. Shenamar alamois ahavucha krei bei almavis. the one who is over death will love him. He'll have what the Baba Rebbe used to call bezel beba, in this world and the next world. He'll have two shulchanos. There'll be Romanian francs in this world with a steak thrown in and a bottle of Pepsi.
Cowboy steak.
Hey, I introduced him to something. Says the Gemara, he'll inherit two worlds. This world and the next world. You know, Rapam used to say that there is nothing better than to be a malamed, because the Rabbeinu Shalom calls himself a malamed. Baruch atah Hashem, hamalamed Torah l'amo Yisrael. There's nothing better than being a malamed. So to be a Ma'abed Torah, this is a Gemara that champions being a Ma'abed Torah. Okay, it's a very veritable pleasure to welcome in Richard Rosenzweig. You know, when Richard comes in, if you look very quickly, you can catch a glimpse of him. Richard, we're holding by the new Mishnah on Daf Lamed Hei Amud Beis. New Mishnah, Lamed Hei Amud Beis.
The alamos, is that like the end of the Yom Buyamekinu Almus also? That word?
Well, except that's two words.
Okay, but it could be understood either way. It's
Right. I'm just saying it's two words over there.
Right, okay.
Now, I also want to say that we again, anybody that can speak to Ruvain Pollack and get him to come back on board, tell him it's getting earlier and earlier. Next week already, share is going to be 8:45. Before you know it, it's going to be getting earlier and earlier.
I see him at Vasikin every morning, so
Please tell him that I miss him almost as much as I missed you. Tell him. By the way, I really mean it. I'm not just saying it. I really mean it. Tell him it's not the same without him. It's just not the same.
he's thinking when he goes to sleep and when he's.
Yeah, I know. But tell him it's early enough now. He's done it before. Tell him he could take an extra vitamin. I'll buy him some melatonin. Now, the next Mishnah tells us things of a guy that are aser b'achila and not aser b'hana. Many of the things in the ensuing Mishnah are aser because of chasnos, because of the fear of assimilation. There is no question about it that the decree of not eating together with Goyim can save a lot of situations of assimilation. Here the man has a Goyish boss, so he figures, I'll go and eat by my Goyish boss. He invited me. I'll take the whole family, the 6 kids. The guy will see that I have a lot of mouths to feed, and maybe, he'll have a little rachmanis. And, you have a strapping 18-year-old boy, and he goes and he notices the guy has a very, very pretty blonde and blue-eyed girl. And by the table they're eating together and have a nice time together. So when you don't break bread with the guy, so that's a very big protection barrier against assimilation. So let's see the Mishnah inside. The following are asr, but they're not asr to benefit, they're only asr b'achila. Chalav shecholdu oivei kechavim, if a guy milked a cow, ve'ein Yisrael rayayim, a yid didn't oversee it. In other words, it's chalav akum. Now chalav akum, we'll see in the Gemara, is a problem, even though the milk of a tamei dika species is not white. The only milk that's white is kosher milk. So what's the problem? The problem is that they could mix in some non-kosher milk because it's cheaper, and you won't know. We'll see in the Gemara. Vapas, that's pas akum, vashemen shalahem, and their oil. However, even though they initially, and this is oil even if it's vegetable oil. No, not talking about, chaza fat. Even their kosher oil, it was a gezeira because of assimilation. Rabbi Ubeis Dino hitiru Hashem. Rabbi and his Bezdin permitted their oil. Vashlokos, also this is bishul akum, that which was cooked by a guy. Ukvoshin shedarchan loseis l'soichan yayin v'chaymitz, or pickled stuff that they pickle, because in the pickling process they add wine and vinegar. Now again, the Gemara is going to ask, but if they add wine, then it should be also even ba'ana, not just ba'achila. So we'll have to find out why that is. Utris trufa, the cut up tuna. See, the cut up tuna that is salted, the problem is once it's cut up, so it doesn't have scales and fins when it's cut up, so we have to be concerned that they might add non-kosher fish to it. Vitzir and fish brine, she'ein bo doga kilbis shoitetes by. Fish brine that doesn't have the kilbis fish swimming around in it. Kilbis fish, Rashi says, cannot survive in non-kosher brine. So therefore, if the kilbis is in it, so then we know that it's kosher brine. But if it doesn't have the kilbis, you can't buy it. V'achilik, the chilik, if you remember, we had this before. Chilik is a fish called the sultanas fish. Now the sultanas fish, when it's young, its scales or fins are not developed yet. So therefore they could mix into it other fish that are taka not kosher. V'koirit shel chiltus, and a grain of chiltus. Chiltus is a very sharp. And since it's very sharp, if they cut it with a knife, the sharpness of the chiltus absorbs the forbidden fat from the knife and makes it off aser. O melech shalkundis, and melech shalkundis, which we'll see that they treated with lard. And hari elu asurin, they're asur, ve'ein isurin isur ana, but they're not forbidden to benefit. Now, so right away the Gemara gets into cholav akum. What's the question with cholav akum? Says the Gemara, what are you worried about? Cholav? L'may necheshla. What should we be concerned about? Imishum ichlufei. If we're afraid that he's going to give you milk of a tamei dika species, he's going to give you camel milk. Tar chiver, kosher milk is white, tamei yarek, while tamei dika milk is yellow. It's not green. Yarek crazy means green. Yarek like a leek means green. Yarek plain means yellow. The imishim iaruve, that you're afraid that maybe he mixed in some camel milk, so then test it. because the din is that only kosher milk will curdle cheese. Nakim, why don't you try to curdle with it? Damamar chalav tar I made. Only kosher milk will make cheese. Chalav tar ain't I made. Says, well, you're right. For cheese, it would be permitted. Either kabayla gvina achanami. Hachavamayaskinna the kabayla lekimcha. We're worried that you're going to use it for a dip, for mayonnaise. And then it's a problem. Says the Gemara, so v'nishkel minei kale, take a little bit from it and test it v'neikum. Says the Gemara, well, not all parts of kosher milk curdle cheese, because the whey of the milk doesn't curdle cheese even by kosher milk. And therefore we're afraid that maybe you'll say, oh, that's the whey, but in that whey might be mixed also non-kosher milk. Kevan the betar nami ikenis yuve. The loikaime, there's the whey of the milk that doesn't curdle cheese. Leka lamekam alo the milk, so it's not a good test. Says the Gemara, you know something, the implication you had is if you want to buy it from them to make cheese, that's okay. However, now the Gemara says even that's not okay. Even if you want to use it for cheese, sometimes when you curdle it, there's some way that settles between the holes of the cheese. And there might be some non-kosher milk there too, and therefore you can't use it even to make cheese. Says the Gemara, v'hapas. You're not supposed to buy from them bread. Now this means even if you know that they baked it in an oven, that's okay, and you know the ingredients, still you can't buy it from them. Am Rav Kana, Am Rav Yochanan, pas lo yihutra bebestin. Rav Kana says the name Rav Yochanan, bread was never permitted with the Bezdin of Rebbe. Says to come up from the fact that Rav Yochanan said that, Michlal de Ikaman de Shari, that there are those that said that when Rebbe was mater shemen, he was mater bread too. Says we're in, yes. The Chiyos Rabdimi Amar Pamachas Yotze Rebbe Lasada. One time Rebbe went out into the field. The Hevi Ovid Kachavim the fun of Pas Purni, bread that was baked in a Purni oven. Purni oven was a commercial oven that opened from the side, like our ovens. Most of their ovens were open on the top. But he brought Pas Purni, bread made in a commercial oven, Ma'afesah, made out of a saw. That's 144 eggs worth. So it's a big loaf. Amar Rebbe Kama Noah Pazu. How beautiful is this bread? Maro Chachamim La'asra. Says, well, what do you mean? What did the Chacham see to prohibit it? What do you mean? We said it's an anti-assimilation maneuver. What do you mean, Maro Chacham? Misham Chasnos. It was an anti-assimilation maneuver. Elamaro Chachamim La'asra B'Sada. Why would the Chachamim answer it if it was brought out into the field? In other words, it wasn't eaten together with them at the table. There was no fraternization. It was brought outside and delivered in the field. Kisvur Na'am, so that when the people heard that, they thought that Hitta Rebbe Apas. So they thought that Rebbe permitted bread. V'lo yibi. Rebbe lo yitter es apas. Rebbe didn't permit it. In other words, because the Rabbanim made a loy plug to answer it even in the field. Rabbi Yosef Yisayim Rashmo by Yehuda Amaloy Kacho Yamaisa. That wasn't what happened. Ela Amru Pamachas Holok Rebbe L'Mokem Echad. Rebbe went to a place. V'ra Pas Dochak L'Talmidim. And he saw that there wasn't sufficient bread for the Talmidim. Now we know that's a problem. Imein kemach ein Torah. Moshe was very makbid, and in yeshiva we always had good food. Very makbid about it. You know, I always tell Marshall, you should come well fed. Well fed. Very makbid about that. I see a difference sometimes when Marshall is hungry. See a difference.
I agree, well fed.
Well fed.
Chili dogs.
So says the Gemara, Amar Rebbe, Ein kan palter? Is there no baker here? So they thought he meant get a goyish baker. He didn't mean that. He meant there's no Yiddish baker around. Says the Gemara, Amar Abchelbei, Afilu Laman Diyama Paltei Oivik Kechavim. Even according to those that believe that Rebbe was referring to a Goyish baker, that's only where there was no option. Rebbe would not permit it if there was an option. When Rebbe permitted it was only outside in the field, where there's no gezeira of chasnas. Hanimil besada aval be'ir loy mishum chasnas. Aivu have a menakis v'ochel pas a bei mitzvah. It's interesting that we say the term bei mitzvah during bein hametzarim. What are the chances of that? Ivy was chewing and eating bread at the city limits, not actually outside of the city yet. He was eating goyish bread. Amalu Rava v'yisem Rav Nachman Yitzchak loy tishtoi b'hadei da'ayvu. Don't talk with ayvu. The ka'achal lachma da'armoi, because he's not following the psak of the sages, and he's eating goyish bread. Now, it could be it's because he didn't go outside of the city limits, and therefore there was still a gzeira of chasnas where he was right by the end of the city, or it's because they only permitted it when there's no Jewish baker. But where there's a Jewish baker, they didn't permit it. Okay, we'll stop over here. This Motzei Shabbos is the last Motzei Shabbos that's at 9:45. Next Motzei Shabbos is going to be 11:15. Next Motzei Shabbos will be 11:25. We're now going to learn the Chumash here. So,
I think in 2 weeks, Motzei Shabbos, it's Tisha B'Av.
That's correct. 2 weeks, Motzei Shabbos is Tisha B'Av, and there won't be a shir then. It's interesting. We did the calendar, and we didn't notice that. Yeah. Okay.
Don't worry about that. Mashiach will be here in time.
Yetz Hashem.
Yesha Kol, forever, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Does that mean we're gonna make it up sometime beforehand?
Well, we're going to have to do something because we're going to be, for Tisha B'Av, we would have to do 3 blocked.
That's what I was asking.
Which is definitely not a good idea.